Okay. Uh, Good evening, class. And today we are actually going to talk about foundations of group behavior and team building. So, when we actually start the class today, we will be first talking about group. So, what do you mean by group? Group is, as we all know, when two or more people interact together or and as well as they're interdependent on each other. And why do they come together? To achieve some objectives. Now, groups can be either formal or informal. Formal groups is which is actually defined by the organization structure, where there is some designated work assignments to establish some tasks, and they're working together to achieve some goals of the which are goals of that particular organization. Informal groups, on the other hand, it's neither formally structured nor it's determined organizationally. So it's formed naturally. It's a natural formation in the work environment. Okay, that why does it happen? When there is a need for social contact. Formal groups can be divided again into three types. First comes up is command group, where it's composed of individuals who directly report to a given manager. The second type is committees, where we have individuals which come together for a special or certain types of projects, specific projects, as we say. And the third type is a task group where people work together to complete a particular job task. There's a particular task is there, so each task has some sub. So you have to perform certain jobs to achieve that task. So that's task group, as we say. Informal group can be further divided. The first type is interest and friendship groups, where people may or may not be aligned into common command or task groups. Are why are they coming together to attain a specific objective? Second type is clique, which is comprising of colleagues who are commonly associated with each other. Now, commonly associated with each other, that can be three types. First is vertical clique, where we are talking about your relationship between the different levels of the organization. Horizontal clique is your relationship across department, and the third is random. It could be anything or a mixed of horizontal and vertical. The third type is subcliche, which is comprising of members of a clique inside the organization as well as people who are outside the organizations. And the fourth type is sales. The name sales is coming after LR sales, who identified four kinds of groups. One is a pathetic group where people are not it's just opposite of sympathetic. They are there, it's not out of sympathy, but they are forced to come to do a work. Erratic, where people behave in a it's just formed without any definite norms. Strategic groups, where where you're coming up to achieve for based on some strategy. And there is the last group, which is the conservative groups, where who are very rigid. Now the question that comes up is, why do people form groups? First comes up where you have similarity with others. You would form a group with people who has similar behavior, similar emotions. You want to be different from the others, distinct. Create Form a group of who are quite distinct from the others. Achieve a status, and you also want to reduce uncertainty. So, what are the stages of group development? The first is forming, where people come together and establish some ground rules, and the formalities are preserved, and the members are treated as strangers because you do not know each other. The second stage is storming, where members start communicating with each other their feelings, but still do not consider themselves to be as team members. They consider themselves to be as individuals. So what happens? They tend to resist whatever is being said by the group leaders and tend to be hostile. Third stage is norming, because that's the time when people start gradually feeling part of the team, and they also realize that they can achieve work if they accept each other's viewpoints. You start becoming more and more flexible. The fourth stage is performing. So only when you start behaving like a team and accepting each other's views, so you start working together, and the atmosphere is open and very trusting atmosphere. There is flexibility, and hierarchy does not play too much of importance here. So once the work is performed, the last stage is adjourning, where the team conducts an assessment of the year, and they also start recognizing the roles and contributions of each members. Let's talk about the group properties. There are multiple properties. The first group property talks about roles, which is a set of expected behavioral patterns with respect to someone occupying a given position in a social unit. Now, when we talk of roles, we talk of role perception, that is, how we are supposed to act in a given situation, our view on how we should be doing it. Role expectations is what others believe on how we should behave. Psychological contract, which is a written agreement that exists between employer and employees. So it's an unwritten agreement, sorry, which is totally a mutual expectation about what each expects from the other. It's not there. So it's not written, it's not documented, but certain things are unwritten, but still we expect that it is expected that this is what you have to do. Our expectations from our employer and our employer's expectations about us as employees. The last that comes up here under this, and the first group property is role conflict, where what happens when we try to comply with one particular role, it comes into conflict with another role. We may find it difficult to comply with that. So the second role. So that's where we talk of role conflict. So it's contradictory. Okay. The second group property is norms. Now, when we talk of norms, norms means the acceptable standards of behavior shared by all the members, which talks about what should be done and what should not be done under certain circumstances. Now, norms, when we talk of norms, it could be norms, certain standards regarding the performance. It could be regarding the social arrangement. It could be with regards to appearance. It could be also with regards to the allocation of resources. The third property is status. Now, what do you mean by status? It's talking about a socially defined position or rank given to groups. Who does it? By it's the who's giving this position. It's by someone outside to someone else, not us. So what determines our status? According to the status characteristic theory, there are three sources. First, the power a person wields over others. If you have more power, you have more status. Second is person's ability to contribute to a group's goals. If you are contributing more, then you have a high status. Third is an individual's personal characteristics. If you have if your personality is if you have a very good looks, you are intelligent, you have money, and so what happens? Your status is high. Next comes up is status and norms. So status has some interesting effects on the power of norms and pressures to conform. High status individuals may be more likely to deviate from those norms when they have low identifications with the group. Next comes up status and group interaction. People tend to become more assertive when they seek to attain higher status in a group. Status inequity. It is important for group members to believe that status hierarchy is equitable. Fourth property talks about size. Now, what happens when you have to complete a task? Smaller groups work faster than larger ones. Again, individuals perform better in smaller groups. Like if it's small, less number of people, you can complete the work faster than if you have large number. If the group size is quite big. But if you are in a group where you have to solve a problem, it's always better to have more number of people where you have more people actually coming up with there's a brainstorming happening and you have more ideas, so it's easy to solve that problem when you're working in a larger group. And what happens, the biggest issue, the biggest challenge that comes up when you're working in a group is the problem of social loafing, where certain individuals tend to put in less effort when they're working together than when they're asked to work by themselves. That's what we say, free riders. The fifth property talks of cohesiveness. And what do you mean by the cohesiveness? It's the degree to which members are attracted to each other and motivated to stay in the group. So if you see this graph talks about the relationship between group cohesiveness and performance norms, and it this results in the level of productivity. We can have a high productivity, moderate productivity, or low productivity, something which ranges between moderate to low productivity. Sixth property talks about diversity. Diversity means the degree to which members in a group are similar or different from each other. When we have diversity, it leads to conflict. It happens. Different people have different opinions, different way of work. Okay, the next topic that we have is group decision making. How do you make, when you work together in a group, you have to make some decisions. So what is the benefit or what are the strengths? What happens when you work in a group? You have better information and knowledge. But what is the challenge that you have? It that is one is it's time. Time is the most important factor, time consuming, because it takes time when you're working together. If you're working by yourself, you can make a faster decision than when you work in together and different people are coming up with different ideas and then brainstorming going forward. You may or may not agree to what others say. Okay, then next comes up when we talk group decision making is effectiveness and efficiency. Now, group decisions are more accurate as compared to when the decisions are made by an individual is an average individual. But group discussions are less accurate than the when you compare to the judgments made by a person who is very good and very much accurate in making decision. When we talk of speed, it's always individuals who are at a better position as compared to group. When we talk of creativity, it's a group which is more effective. A group decision, when we talk, it takes more time than an individual when they are asked to work by themselves. So these are certain questions for you to solve. Next we come across is teams. We were talking about groups, now teams. So what's the difference between a group and a team? These are certain points that we have. Now, when we talk of groups and teams, so we are actually talking about the first criteria that we have is goals. When we talk of goals, now what happens in groups? There is sharing of information, but in terms of teams, when we talk of teams, it's collective performance. When we look at synergy, so for the groups, it's neutral. Sometimes it can be negative, whereas when we talk of teams, it is positive. When we talk of accountability, from the group's point of view, it's individual accountability, whereas in a team, it could be individual and mutual. And when we talk of skills, so for groups, it could be random and varied, whereas in case of teams, it is complementary. Okay. Types of teams that we have. The first type is problem solving teams, where you form a team to solve a particular problem. It's well defined problem. Next comes up is self managed, where you do not need a supervisor. You can take care of yourself and you can just work by yourself. Cross functional is where you form a team with experts across departments. And when we talk of virtual teams, it's a virtual structure. So we're talking of a combination where we have certain people who are in the office and certain people who are actually experts who are in some other part of the world and working together through the internet. So the next question that comes up is that what are the factors that determine whether teams are successful? The first thing that comes up is availability of resources that should be adequate, type of leadership, the organizational structure, the extent of trust, the evaluation pattern of employees, and the corresponding reward system. So, for team effectiveness, we are talking about context, which talks of resources, leadership structure, trust, the performance evaluation and reward system. We talk of composition, which comprises of members' abilities, their personality, their roles, their diversity, team size, flexibility, and preferences. And third is process, which talks process, common purpose, goals, efficacy of the team, conflict levels, and social loafing. Okay, now we come to the next thing. That's the last topic that we have under this is team composition. Now, team composition, when we talk of team composition, it includes variables that relate to how teams should be staffed, the ability and personality of team members, allocation of roles and diversity, size of the team, members' preference for teamwork, abilities when we say we are talking of the skills. Personality is our own personality, like the different members have different types of personality. The allocation of roles, the jobs that we are being assigned, who should be assigned with what kind of roles. There when there are more people working, there will be a diversity. Different people come from different cultural background, social background, so there will be diversity. Size of the team that matters. An organization should know how to come up with the right size, team size, and the member preferences. Whom do you want to be as part of your team? Okay, so with this, we actually come to the end of today's session. So I'll see you in the next class.